Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Standing Committee on Homelessness. We'll go ahead and call to order. We'll have a roll call with Kathy Valdez.
Dr. Shafak, all members are present.
Thank you. To speak on an item on the agenda, please fill out a speaker slip with the number that you want to speak on. For members of the public that are on Zoom, you may press 9 on your phone. Speakers will have 3 minutes to address the committee. We will start with the approval of the minutes. It's been a moment since we met, but our last meeting was in February 26. Would I have a motion to approve those, Mayor?
So moved.
So moved and approved unanimously. Do we have any oral communication? Okay, yeah, let's. Oh, perfect timing.
Morning.
All right, Pete.
Good morning,
let's,
everybody.
Let's hear from you. Thank
I
you
just
so much
wanted to
for
share
joining
a
us this morning.
cool little update about the Buena Creek Navigation Center. We actually just on June 6th, I have a couple of notes. Let me check my couple of notes. Just so I'm 100% sure it's right. On June 6th of this month, we actually had our 200th permanent housing exit from the Buena Creek Navigation Center. So I think that's pretty something that we've been celebrating. And this gentleman, it fell on him, and it was kind of exciting because we had like 3 people about to move out, and we were wondering as a team who's going to be that 200th person. And it happened to be an individual. He's a 59-year-old male, and his case manager, Warren, while working with him while at the BCNC, he'd been experiencing homelessness for 4 years, and he found out that he had bladder cancer. And that's like, even when you have family around you, even when you have a secure home around you, that's a scary thing, you know? And so I'm thankful that he had it, got that news while he was at the BCNC with support around him, because he really did find a community and a support system around him during this hard news. And his own words said, I wouldn't have known what to do if it wasn't for you guys. And I think sometimes when you'll see later our dashboards and all our statistics and services, referrals, and housing exits, et cetera, but sometimes what we can't show on dashboards is like the emotional uplifting and support that is being given on a daily basis. This guy got news that would make you fear for your life, and instead he found a community that supported him, and we were able to connect him to PACE. We were able to connect him with San Diego Rescue Mission with the ERF funding, and he's actually now staying in like a little studio apartment that the ranch has on their property, which he found a lot of support through community. So he's continuing to get communal support, PACE services, and to work on this treatment that he's going through. So I just thank you guys that you have such a dignified place here in the city of Vista to shelter those experiencing homelessness. So thank you guys.
Thank you for those updates. Really appreciate that. Oh, yes. Please, could we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll move on to our first presentation, our 2026 point-in-time counts. Take it away, Jonathan.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair. I'd like to take a quick second to formally introduce Catalina Langen, our new management analyst with the Housing and Homeless Services Division. She did give a presentation to the City Council a couple weeks ago, but you'll be able to familiarize yourself a little bit more with her this morning. Okay, so the 2026 point-in-time count, as the committee knows, was held nationwide this year in January. There are 3 primary mechanisms the City of Vista uses to measure homelessness in Vista. First one, of course, being the point-in-time count. This is the annual homeless census as dictated by HUD. HUD directs it to be performed every 2 years. Here in San Diego, it's performed every year in January as coordinated by the Regional Task Force on Homelessness. It's a nationwide count with a primary benefit of duplicating counts across regions pretty effectively since it is performed at the same time across the nation. The second one is the Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS. Here in San Diego, it's called Clarity. That is a platform that is also directed by HUD, which allows all service providers to enter client-level data into the same database, so each service provider can track the progress of each client as they move through the continuum of care in search of permanent housing. Each provider will enter their own case notes and will be able to track, again, the services provided throughout their care to help inform what the next step is for each client. HMIS is available only to direct service providers, so all of the city's contracted providers do have HMIS and do utilize HMIS. The city and its staff do not have access to HMIS. The third tool is the by name list, as directed by the City Council, that is maintained by the San Diego Rescue Mission, the city's contracted outreach provider. This, the primary benefit for the by name list is that it is updated consistently as the San Diego Rescue Mission is out providing outreach to our clients and residents experiencing homelessness. It does not deduplicate clients between regions as the point in time count does, since it is updated continuously. It also allows clients to be indexed and maintained on the by name list as long as they're engaging in resources and engagement within the past 90 days. So there is a higher count as expected between the by name list and the point in time count, which we'll discuss a little bit more later in this presentation. So in 2026, there were a total of 290 residents experiencing homelessness counted in Vista. 157 of those were unsheltered, 133 sheltered. The unsheltered count is an increase of 9% from 2025, which from 144 increasing to 157. The sheltered count also increased 10% compared to 2025, with last year counting 121. You'll also see a graph to the right which tracks the count for the past 10 years. It's important to note there was no point in time count conducted in 2021 due to COVID. Since 2025, it's also important to note that the Buena Creek Navigation Center clients from each respective city are assigned to that city. So the residents sheltered there from Encinitas are attributed to the Encinitas count, and it's only the Vista clients that are sheltered at the BCNC that are allocated to the Vista count.
Do we have a count on the number of volunteers that participated in the counts in each of these years? Just as, I mean, it's relevant because it does drive the number.
Absolutely, yes. So in Vista specifically, there were at least 40 in each of the last 3 years. To the best of my knowledge, I recall about 60 total volunteers in 2026. And it was about the same size last year in 2025.
And Jonathan, could you confirm the location that we sent Vista volunteers to?
Yeah.
Do we have a Vista site?
We'll look at a heat map in just a second. Absolutely. Okay, across the county, there was 9,803 residents experiencing homelessness counted in the San Diego County. That composed of 52% being unsheltered and 48% sheltered. Notably, 49% reported being homeless for the first time in 2026, and 80% reported becoming homeless in San Diego. That does demonstrate an overall decrease of 1% in counted homelessness from 2025, down from 9,905. This is attributed to an 11% decrease in unsheltered homelessness and a 12% increase in sheltered homelessness. The decrease in unsheltered homelessness and increase in sheltered homelessness could indicate a better utilization of shelter resources throughout the entire county as compared to 2025. I'll also note, of course, we'll also have the ability to review any of these slides at the conclusion of the update to discuss any of the metrics the committee might like to see. The chart on the left is a regional breakdown according to the chart by city. It is important to note these are listed by deployment site. So as the Madam Chair mentioned, the boundaries that are assigned to each one of these deployment sites don't align neatly with city limits, and so it's not quite accurate to call these the counts according to each city, but rather by deployment sites. It's important to note that starting last year, before last year, San Marcos was included with the Vista deployment site, And now they are conducting their own sites, so they're listed separately. But that's just one example of why it's important to note these are by deployment site, not necessarily within city limits. So you'll notice North County is split between two separate regions, North Inland Region and North Coastal Region. Again, overall, we did see an 11% decrease in unsheltered homelessness throughout the county. In North County, across both inland and coastal regions, 3 cities in particular, aside from Fallbrook, which has a relatively nominal count overall, 3 cities experienced an increase in unsheltered homelessness. Those 3 are Vista, Carlsbad, and Oceanside. I think it's important to note that these 3 cities, including Vista, received pretty substantial encampment resolution funding awards in the last year. And so, as directed by the City Council, our outreach provider is surveying our clients to assess whether or not clients are coming to the area based on the concentration of resources from the state applied to those 3 cities. The by name list, as maintained by the San Diego Rescue Mission through the end of January, showed 390 individuals experiencing homelessness. This does kind of maintain a gradual increase of the counts each month since the list began. You'll notice at 390, there's a substantially higher number of individuals being listed on the by name list as compared to the point in time count. Again, I believe it is because of the larger window of clients staying on the list based on a 90-day engagement window versus a single night. The high utilizers of services, again, as maintained by the San Diego Rescue Mission, showed 37 individuals on this list. The primary barriers to addressing their homelessness for this group included substance use at 12, mental health at 7, and income at 7. So these 2 heat maps you'll notice on the left is the concentration of unsheltered homelessness counted during the point in time count by census tract. On the right is the heat map of the service engagements by the San Diego Rescue Mission through the end of December 31st, 2025. You'll notice both maps aren't to the same scale, but if the viewer will consider the city limits, you will notice that the concentrations between the point in time count and the service interactions by the San Diego Rescue Mission do agree with one another, with the primary concentrations along the Hacienda Biological Preserve overlay, the Vista downtown area, and the Sycamore corridor. This concludes the presentation, and we are available for any questions.
Thank you, Jonathan. My concern about our recent process for the point in time count is just the change in deployment sites. Can you explain a little bit further about how these separate cities in our region, North Inland Region, San Marcos and Vista, like the differences between those deployment sites?
As far as the sites themselves, of course, those deployment sites are within those cities. So this on the left is a census tract assigned to the Vista point in time count. You'll notice large areas in the unincorporated areas of the county to the east of city limits as we approach San Marcos. It's the same for other deployment sites where all of the county is counted within all the different deployment sites. So certain deployment sites will include unincorporated areas, including these. I don't have the census tract maps for the other cities, but this, for reference, is Vista's.
Okay.
Where are you getting the term deployment site? Because you have, they always meet at Lifeline. Is that the deployment site?
That was the deployment site. Now we have it
That
here at the
changed.
Morris B. Vance Community Room.
Okay, now it's the community, but so that's the place that they're embarking from to do
Correct.
the count.
Yep.
But
So-
it's not the census tracts that are being counted.
The census tracts being counted for Vista, for example,
Those did not change.
those did not change, no.
There was a alignment, I think you said, of San Marcos is not being deployed out of the Vista location,
Not
right?
since last year, yeah.
To be clear, does San Marcos have their own site as
They
of
now
this
have their own
year?
deployment site, yes.
Okay.
The reason why I mentioned that is because with the same number of volunteers counting just Vista or Vista and San Marcos, naturally a lot of census tracts are suspected to not have been counted as effectively with fewer volunteers compared to the number of tracts to be counted previously with the 2 cities at one site.
And can you give me a word on these keys here? I think it's the 3rd or 4th slide, the large chart with all the breakdowns by city. ES, TH, SH up at the top?
ES is emergency shelter,
Okay.
TH is transitional housing, and SH is sheltered. I'm sorry, SH is safe haven.
Okay.
What is Safe Haven?
Safe haven is a program that's no longer being funded by HUD. It is some form of shelter, but perhaps I'll ask one of the other providers to add some more context of what safe haven was, if anybody knows.
Not an existing program? So
Not
the
an existing
cities that have a shelter currently, we're seeing higher counts in those cities, just as a note.
I'll also note, while we're on this chart, it's important to note that HUD only receives the county-wide count. They don't see this breakdown. This is provided by the RTFH for local planning purposes, but not for reporting purposes to HUD.
What is reported to HUD?
Just the total count.
The total count, which has gone down overall.
Yes, correct, in the county.
And what are the implications of this reporting, right? If it does an increase in homelessness guarantee more funding, does a reduction in homelessness guarantee less funding? Is that track? Is that rational?
To my knowledge, it doesn't affect funding directly, but of course, we'll certainly inform legislators as they are considering continuing or new funding. But it's not included in any formula for funding allocations, as far as I know.
Outside of, continuing to reference this against our by name list, which I would say is more accurate and more beneficial for our planning in the day-to-day. I don't have any further questions. Do you, Mayor?
I think the issue of how many volunteers are being fielded at the different sites, I'm sure that was tracked. Can we ask for that?
The number of volunteers? Certainly.
Yeah, because, if nobody shows up to count, then the count obviously will be zero.
That's right.
So I think it's relevant to understand the method. We all know the point-in-time count is a very broken, I participated in it several years. It's very much, I had good volunteers who said, well, I've seen some people over there before, so we'll count them even though they're not here today. And I wasn't there to play policeman, so I didn't tell them no. But I was just observing and noticing. And everybody's got it, their heart is pure and their intent is good, but it does matter how many volunteers get fielded. And, I've been encouraging other cities to adopt the by name list if they really want to know what their population is. Did our by name list track an increase? I think it did. That was consistent with the increase in homelessness noticed in the point-in-time count.
I think that's fair to say. I will say, of course, the by name list started with the San Diego Rescue Mission around the beginning of 2025. So we've only had about a year and a half of data, but we are reporting on it every month, as you can see in the chart at the bottom here. So I think starting, I would say probably around the end of last year is when we start to see it normalize, as you can tell, pretty well in having a consistent count. Whereas at the beginning, of course, every month it was increasing month over month until it started to normalize. So I do think right now we have a pretty good count of how many people are engaging with services in Vista.
How's all this working, Jonathan? All of it?
The whole system?
Yeah.
I think that's too much for me to opine on, but certainly I think
Somebody has to. You're the point man for the city on all these programs.
yeah.
You're the one who spends 40 hours a week thinking about this. You have to opine on this.
Okay. I think it's working well in Vista. I think we aren't able to measure what the homelessness environment would look like if we did not have the diversity in services we have now. I do know that compared to some of our neighbors, we are noted to having a pretty wide portfolio of services from outreach, shelter, transitional housing, all the way to permanent housing. So I do think we're working quite well.
What I would like to know, Jonathan, is for our planning, what is more effective? And maybe it's both, right? But is that our by name list and our enrollment in our current services, right, isolated within the city of Vista, or is it this regional point in time count? what is most helpful for our planning?
For our planning between the by name list and the point in time count, I think it's probably a combination of both. I think our local by name list doesn't consider the environment in our neighboring cities, and we know with our population, oftentimes we are seeing duplication of clients accessing services between cities. The point in time count does do a good job of that, and it is a program that is consistent year over year, and it has a much longer set of data for us to consider. The by name list, I do think, does a very effective job to show, I think, the volume of services being administered, but only in Vista as a silo, which is, again, is important. But the high utilizer list also is something the point in time count does not inform us on. So having this data is also very important for us to consider what kinds of other services could reduce the cost to the taxpayers most effectively.
Okay, and I would just restate that I'm identifying that the cities without shelter services are, contributing to that lower count for us. That doesn't necessarily mean that those cities have resolved homelessness. Perhaps they're not addressing homelessness in their city.
I think that's very fair to say. I think the cities that we see fewer resources in are showing a decrease in counts. So it's kind of one of those great features of work where if you're doing a good job, you're rewarded with more work, right? I think seeing the concentration of encampment resolution funding in the cities of Vista, Carlsbad, and Oceanside in North County is pretty telling, with those three cities experiencing increases in homelessness compared to the others.
We are being awarded funding, that's correct, yeah. Okay, all right.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that perspective is right. Our previous city manager said, don't provide services, you'll attract the problem to Vista. I had a belief as a council member and as mayor that if we could show the public that we were serious about providing meaningful solutions to homelessness, that if people needed a bed, that we would provide it. If they needed a pathway out of chronic homelessness on the streets, we would provide it. I thought that if we fought for that we might have some success in fighting for enforcement of the law. Our illegal encampment laws, our drug laws. Our local leaders, the sheriff, first among them, has refused to use the jail effectively to allow us to solve the problem of repeated misdemeanor violators, those who are legally camping, those who are shoplifting, those who are committing low-level misdemeanor drug crimes. All of these crimes could bring somebody into the criminal justice system where they could receive drug court as an alternative to incarceration, where we could help them to end their cycle of addiction and criminality. But that's not happening. The governor is opposed to it. Basically, none of the leaders of this state care about use of enforcement. And, I'll just say it for everybody who's listening at home, all three of them. We really have to stop and ask ourselves what we're doing here. The state auditor said $24 billion over, 5 years period of time. That's 2 years ago that report came out. We do have to ask ourselves what we're doing here. Now, I love the stories. I love that we helped 200 people get into permanent housing. I think it's fantastic. But we really do have to ask ourselves, if all we've done is churn, and I know we've done some good things, and I know all of you here who are service providers are all now dependent on the government, whereas, decades past, you would have been dependent on the generosity of the philanthropic community, which still exists. There's just something completely wrong. The problem's not getting better. Our sidewalks and the encampments are not being resolved. The titling of the encampment resolution funding is a joke in the extreme, because the governor, chiefly among all of these leaders, refuses, despite his outward political rhetoric, where he drags news cameras through encampments. He refuses to allow us to do meaningful things to clean up encampments on Caltrans property, where he has exclusive authority. So from time to time, and these meetings are supposed to be a punctuated opportunity for us to decide whether what we're doing is working or not. At some point, it is up to our council members, and this is one of my last homeless standing committee meetings that I don't know how many we have before the end of the year. So I got to make my final points on this before I'm off this council. I have a difficult time supporting the homelessness industrial complex, the HIC, as people have called it, when the other side refuses to support enforcement. If I can't take people off the street who shouldn't be dying on our streets, I want to support this because it's the right thing to do and because it's necessary if we can compel people to leave the street. But the city of Vista, this council, and I'm saying this as a retiring council member who's not running for anything. So I'm just speaking as a citizen now who's now got 12 years of experience in this. The numbers are not getting better. The appearance of our community is not getting better. But yet we have a massive increase in expenditure of taxpayer funds. That's problematic. Every one of you has great stories. I've been with you personally, and I've seen you help people. And I've seen the good that does, and I've seen the value in that. And I'm not opposed to any of that, but our effort is not a holistic effort because it does not include enforcement. And our Vista deputies have tried within the authority that they have from the sheriff, although I don't believe the sheriff has been a willing partner herself because of the lack of access to the jail. So here's where we're at. We're spending tens of millions of dollars of state funding that's been given to us to provide services that you point out that unsheltered homelessness went down by 10%. Was it up 10% unsheltered in Vista?
The decrease in unsheltered homelessness was in the county overall.
But that was about 10%. That was 11% right here. What was the increase in unsheltered homelessness just in Vista?
In Vista was 14.
Was 14 as a real number or as a percentage?
As a number, 9% increase.
9%. Okay, so that's a 20% increase compared to the rest of the region.
Excuse me, it's 13, not 14. But it is an increase.
Is it 9%?
9%, yep.
Okay, so 9% is a 20% differential from the rest of the county. My intent in establishing these programs was to serve the entire community, not just the homeless community. And in order to serve the interests of the entire community, reducing the incidence and occurrence of homelessness was a chief objective of this. Reduce and eliminate homelessness. What we are doing is spending locally in our city tens of millions of dollars of taxpayer resources, and it's not reducing the problem. So, this is for the council. At what point do we analyze what we're doing? I've been mayor for 4 years. We've been doing a lot of this work for 4 years. We've been doing a lot of it for 6 years. Where are we at here? And every one of you who's receiving funding has to ask, what's my role in reducing and eliminating the occurrence of homelessness? Whether that's, and we can't be there and do the job with you every day. So I don't know if services are attracting people to Vista. The people of Vista deserve and have an entitlement that their funds are spent to actually solve a problem, not to make it worse in their city. So I'm not suggesting eliminating services, but I do think we really have to ask ourselves when we're providing them day by day, whether or not, if we're making exceptions for people who we think are traveling to Vista, at some point, This is the one issue I'm probably going to continue to advocate on in the community, and I'm going to be more vocal on, because at the end of the day, the number one thing that drives me, although a lot of people would like to assail me as I just don't want to look at homeless people on the street, but that's not the truth. The truth is I see the people who are dying in large numbers, and I see the reality that human beings shouldn't be sleeping on the street. And it's really hard for our political leaders, very few of whom will say out loud that it should be illegal to sleep on the street. And yes, we should provide everybody a safe, warm place to sleep. We should provide shelter beds. We could do that. We're really not short of the funding to provide shelter beds. We're choosing not to. We can't control the number of people at any one time because we're not enforcing any of the rules. With no enforcement comes an inability to reduce the number of people who need these services. The community needs to cry out to its leaders to enforce its laws. These laws have been on the books for decades. They make sense. The Supreme Court has opined that we have the right to tell people that they can't sleep on the street. I believe it's the righteous thing to do to provide them a safe, warm bed. If people need a meal, feed them. But I don't think people should be allowed to use heroin, methamphetamine, and fentanyl, or suffer from schizophrenia or severe bipolar disease on the show. I mean, what kind of a barbarous society leaves people to die from their addiction or severe mental illness on the street and doesn't forcibly intervene to stop it? And of course, we have to protect people's constitutional liberties, but let's get at it. Let's do it. This has to be a moment of inflection where we ask ourselves why what we're doing is not working. Does the community agree that the output from our services without the reduction in homelessness, is that a success? I have a hard time feeling confident that it's definitely a success without reducing these numbers, especially since we haven't been able to eliminate encampments, which is, people really want to see our community cleaned up. They want to see our streets cleaned up. People drive past the problem every day in our city, and they cannot understand why their city council, their city manager, their sheriff, all the people in leadership, every last one of us is guilty of failing to solve this problem. It's vexing, but I can tell you there are many voices that agree that enforcement is necessary. And it's the one thing that we cannot get consensus from Democrats in power, who overwhelmingly are, they're the ones making the decision. I'm not saying it's a partisan issue, but I am saying, Democrats are the ones governing the state. The governor's a Democrat, the legislature is supermajority Democrats, the sheriff's a Democrat. And we can't get access to our own jails that our tax dollars support. And, I was a lot softer in my advocacy on this and didn't want to call the sheriff out as harshly and publicly. But at this point, I don't care anymore. I have nothing left to do but to tell the truth. She personally has made a policy that has denied our deputy sheriffs in Vista access to the jail that our Vista residents pay tax dollars to provide. We cannot put people into the jail for illegal camping, even though we may have cited them a dozen times, even though the rescue mission may have offered them 30 times to go to the shelter. There may be a bed available for them at the navigation center, but they refuse, and we take no action. And that is what is unacceptable, is the fact that we choose to take no action. We choose to leave them there to die or to commit crime, to degrade, to literally trash our community. And it is so utterly wrong, and every citizen knows it, but nobody wants to call out the truth. So that's the truth. I look forward to hearing what you all think about that. Because if we're not here to solve the problem, what are we really doing? You know, we all, it's great to have an interaction with one person, love on that person, and know that you help that person emotionally, mentally, you know, physically. But government isn't the only way to do that. The bigger failure is not the providing of services. The biggest failure is the refusal to enforce the laws, the refusal to instill and maintain order in our communities. We need more of our special care facilities, which are a locked nursing home. The county provides these facilities. We have a couple of hundred special care beds in the county where somebody can either be adjudicated in a court process to be in a conservatorship, or they can stipulate as a deferral to prosecution. And this is why it's so important that we advocate to enforce our drug laws, not because we're trying to lock every drug user up for 10 years, but because we can bring somebody into a nursing home setting as an alternative to jail. And instead of watching that person destroy themselves with heroin addiction on the streets where their parents can't find them, we can bring them into a nursing home environment, one that they call egress control. That means you cannot leave. It's not a jail with bars, but it's a mental health care facility. I was the only elected leader that showed up in Lakeside when we added 120 new beds to the Lakeside Special Care Facility. Nobody else thought that was important to show up at. I've advocated we should have a facility like that in Vista. These facilities are, they're locked so they don't create chaos on the streets around them. We need more facilities that provide involuntary treatment beds so that we can, the paradigm should be, would you like to come voluntarily to the navigation center, or would you like to come involuntarily to jail or special care? But right now, the paradigm is, would you like to stay right here on the streets, continue to use drugs, or get some help? Those shouldn't be the two choices. The two choices should be, there's a sheriff's deputy and there's a social worker. You pick. It's your choice. We want to give you the hand up. We want to give you, we want to help you change your life. The intent is not to punish people. The intent is to rescue them. We got to all get focused on the reality that the public wants to see a real change, and they're not seeing it. And this is a problem. So even though there's a lot of good work being done, the problem's not getting solved. It's getting bigger. It's continuously getting bigger. And at some point, the pressure is going to be insurmountable politically to do something dramatically different. We got to all own that. So, you won't have to listen to me in 6 months from now. So this is one of my last chances to give you one of my diatribes. But we got to all think about what we're doing to solve the problem. That's all I got for now.
Thank you for those comments. I did a little bit of a reflection and a study of the numbers in front of us, and considering your points, Mayor, that homelessness has appeared to have increased in Vista according to these point-in-time count numbers. I'm looking at the cities with shelters, right? Because if we're talking about cities without shelters, that's not fair, right? It's easy for them to have a low count because they are not participating in the service providing. But if we look at cities with shelters, and then we look at those cities that have increased their homelessness, that would be National City, Escondido, Vista, Carlsbad, and Oceanside. Okay, so there are 5 cities that have shelters that have had an increase in homelessness. And then we see a number of cities that have shelters and have decreased their homelessness. That would be the cities of Chula Vista, City of San Diego, City of El Cajon, City of La Mesa, Santee, City of Escondido, And I was going to say the city of Encinitas, but I have to scratch that because they actually got rid of their safe parking program. So if we want to show up in next year's point in time count saying we've reduced homelessness in the city of Vista, we can just shut our shelter down. And then the numbers would look really good. So I'm going to just scratch Encinitas off of this list because they don't get to claim a reduction in homelessness after taking away valuable services from people. So it was actually 6 cities that were able to decrease homelessness while still providing services. Can we take a look at those cities, Jonathan? Are they doing enforcement? How much does that enforcement cost? What adjacent services are they providing as well as shelter? How different are their services from ours? What does their population look like? Are they experiencing more substance use issues than we are? Are they experiencing more domestic violence issues? Or what are the scale of things for them? Are they able to reduce homelessness because they have more funding? How are they able to get that funding? So I think we can work regionally and study and investigate for a solution to the problem. Which the problem in the city of Vista, if we're being really clear on what we're talking about, I don't really like to use percentages sometimes when we're talking about really small numbers. In the city of Vista, right, small numbers in the city of Vista, according to our point in time count, 157 unsheltered people. So in that one night, 157 people out there on the street. But we know that that's not accurate. Probably more accurate is the by name list that identifies around 400 homeless individuals. And could you clarify, Jonathan, is that 390 number for the by name list, is that people who are unsheltered, or is that all people experiencing homelessness, including those who
It's
were
unsheltered only.
unsheltered only? Okay, so maybe at the top level, at any time in the month, we have 400 people sleeping on our streets. Heartbreaking. But we also have the pleasure of serving 133 sheltered individuals. Some cities can't say that. They're serving any unsheltered individuals. So if we would like to see a change in those percentages in our city, I think the first thing that we can do is to explore the data that has been provided to us by this regional effort. It's been shoved down our throats. It's something that we have to comply with every year. Best for us to make use of it and identify what are the strategies that the city of San Diego and the city of El Cajon are using to reduce homelessness in their city, because they're offering services while also coming in at a lower count. So that would be my hope for how we can use this data. Let's keep on keeping on with our by name list, and let's keep trying to promote accuracy. And I really appreciate Pete's point earlier, because the fact that we're like so locked in to every single client and we know everyone's phase of where they're at to the point where we can identify our 200th customer, like that's pretty good. So I want us to keep doing more of that, but there might be changes that we need to make. This is part of the oversight that we get to provide up here, and it does come from the council, it comes from members of the public. So everyone continue to provide your feedback on this data. How is this publicly available? It's on our website, right? People can share their comments with us.
Comments regarding the meeting itself?
Regarding the point in time count data.
The data is posted on the Regional Task Force on Homelessness website. We also have a copy on our website. There's not really an ability to comment, but certainly I think our staff contact information is available on the website that they could submit comments if they like.
I would solicit that from people. I would ask people to engage with this information and give us feedback. Obviously, we have our wonderful clerk. We can reach out to Kathy Valdez for public comments, but this should be a public discussion as much as possible. So that would be my comment on just what's in front of us right now. I appreciate the presentation. Thank you so much.
What's the 133 sheltered? Where are those people?
On the
Off the
previous
top of my head, Buena Creek Navigation Center, Operation Hope.
So 36 at Buena Creek Navigation Center, our Vista. How many beds does Operation Hope have?
It varies. They have, I believe off the top of my head, it's 8 rooms with however many beds are within a household habitating that room. For example, there could be empty beds if there are 4 beds but 3 household members. It doesn't add up to the sheltered count if that's what you're getting at. There are also other shelters operating not funded by the city of Vista for whose records we don't have access to. So those are also considered in this report.
I mean, why would we not know if they're sheltered? I mean,
They're reported in HMIS, which we don't have access to, and we don't fund
are
them, so they have no
our
obligation to report
Vista
to us.
participants part of that?
It should be yes.
Okay, so was that 16? So 16,
16.
call Operation Hope like 36.
That's probably fair,
So it's like, what is that, like 88?
something like that.
So we still got like another 50 something. Can you figure out where those beds are?
Yeah.
I mean, we ought to know that.
Yes, we can look into that.
Yeah. Those people should have been the easiest people to count because they're in a bed that, is being provided by someone. So that should be the easiest to identify where are those people. They're literally in a philanthropically or government provided bed. So, yeah, I mean, I think Escondido has done some great things to restore enforcement. They're still providing services, but they've become very circumspect about the need for enforcement at the same time. Our emergency safe parking, that's not shelter.
It is considered sheltered.
Oh, is it?
I'm sorry. Safe parking is unsheltered. Unsheltered.
Yeah. So that doesn't count for the sheltered population. All right. Well, you'll look at that and get back to us.
Certainly. I'll add one more perspective I think it's important to consider, if I may, which the question was about what my opinion is on whether or not these programs are working. I do think the city council and our staff and our providers are either hired or elected to protect the local taxpayers' interests. I think that's completely fair. I'll also offer in conversation with some of our colleagues as well, including those with increased counts where we know we have better resources. I think as a whole, when we consider North County, especially with, as the Vice Chair mentioned, the changes in Escondido and the increase in services as we near the coast along the 78, I think I see the overall decrease in North County as a net benefit to the region. I think when we see there are fewer resources being provided in other cities, more in others, I think it's important to consider them collectively to see what effect that is, because those experiencing homelessness, the factors aren't changing. So it's only the location in which they're engaging services, I think that's what we're seeing the shift in. But overall, I think we are seeing a net benefit. We saw for the first time an overall decrease. 1% is nominal, but it's in the right direction countywide. So while I do think it's fair to say that with the increase in services, we're somehow rewarded with a higher count in Vista specifically, but I do think it's also important to consider the context of the wider region, especially North County. I've advocated for the RTFH to report on this sub-region wide rather than by city. Even HUD doesn't reserve this level of granular data. So I think that's just one important consideration, which is that I think overall throughout North County, we're seeing the benefits of what we're doing here locally.
I mean, that's a perspective.
It's a perspective, yeah, just
You're
one.
using the word rewarded with, like we're being rewarded with more people to
I
serve.
was using it ironically, yeah.
Okay.
It's not a reward.
Yeah, I mean, the citizens of Vista aren't looking at the number going up as a reward. There's 2 metrics that matter. One is this point in time count because it's the only public metric that gets any attention in the news media. That's our report card for people who are reading it in the newspaper. But there's a much more important metric. Imelda, I have made this point before about where is our cops deputy team at this meeting, and they're not here. And It's got to be the city manager's office that leads on the enforcement issue. You've got to have staff, you've got to have council that has your back. But right now, I know you have 3 council members that want enforcement, maybe more. You got to cause the sheriff's captain, he doesn't have to sit through this whole meeting, but we got to have an update at these meetings on enforcement. It is 50% of the problem,
Correct. And we did confirm they will be at the next strategic update in September. However, yes, for the next 2 meetings, we'll ensure that cops deputies are in attendance.
I mean, I have to call out publicly that I've brought this to Mr. Conley's attention, and I think you guys do a good job, but I brought this point forward before that they're not here and they should be. And so, there's 2 sides of the coin. There's the right hand of compassion, and then there's the left hand of accountability and discipline. And, it takes mom and dad isn't here today, not to be gendered in my roles, but, the father usually provides the disciplinary structure in the house. That's not here. It is essential that both structure, discipline, and caring and nurturing are both represented in this effort. Both of those things have to be present in order to solve this problem. The metric that our residents really care about is as they drive to the grocery store, to soccer practice, or to work and school, how many people do they see crawling out of ravines? When my wife goes to Stater Brothers grocery store and she sees people coming out of that walking path that somebody must have apparently thought was going to be a great jogging path for the good people of Vista to use. I'll bet you at some point there was a nice lady probably pushed her baby with a stroller through there. But now anybody in the right mind would have to suspect that they'd be stabbed to death if they were to walk that path. I mean, it's a stunning indictment of our entire city organization and me as mayor and this entire council, and I accept responsibility. In 3.5 years as mayor, I failed to get the sheriff to allow us. I took deputies. Councilmember Melendez voted with me. 4 of us voted to restore the encampment ban. We walked with deputies through encampments, and I had one deputy who was so frustrated because he said, "You want me to put handcuffs on somebody who's high on drugs? They're going to fight me. They're going to stab me." He said, "I want to go home to my wife tonight." And he said, "Absolutely nothing will come of it. The sheriff will not let us put this person in jail. They'll never show up for the court hearing." But there are services that we can bring people who are drug addicted, who are criminal, and I call them criminal because they've committed a thing called a crime. And I'm sick of this justice-involved person crap. If you break the frickin' law, you're criminal. And stop it with the justice-involved person stuff. We don't want to hear it. If you break the law, you're a criminal. Give the good people, the productive people, the tax-paying citizen, the respect that the people who break the law in our community are criminals. We don't like criminals. But we don't have to just be punitive. We can rehabilitate that person. We can help them become permanently housed. We can help them separate from their addiction. We can love on them. I would love to give them to your care and custody service providers to love on them, to get them healed. I don't want to lock them away in jail for the next 10 years. But I've got to have jail as an option if I'm going to ask somebody to either accept the services that we've offered at the shelter, the Navigation Center, at the Vista House. Hey, we're going to give you a bed at the Vista House, but listen, if we catch you committing crimes, or you're going to be at the Navigation Center, but if you're back out there committing crimes, you're going to go to jail. We're giving you an opportunity. And here's the deal. You're going to go to jail for a year, and maybe after 6 months of good behavior, maybe we can put you back into an outpatient program that's supervised, but we collectively, and everybody in this room who's failed to lift their voice up the same way I'm lifting mine up is part of the problem, and I'm blaming you publicly. If you're not saying that jail has to be an alternative to refusal to accept services and for an individual to begin to change their life, then you are part of the problem. Jail and involuntary treatment must be the alternative to refusal to accept treatment. They must be the alternative. Allowance to continue a life of crime, a life of addiction, and a life on the streets is presently the default position of the governor of the state of California, the legislature of the state of California, the sheriff of San Diego County, the San Diego County Board of Supervisors. And though the city council, and I appreciate the city council voted for in favor with one screaming and running out of the room and opposed, but this council has given direction to the city manager and to our sheriff's captain and to our city attorney's office, who's not you, but our city attorney's office largely has been, you're a prosecutor, aren't you? No, who's our prosecutor? Is that Beverly? We don't hear anything about prosecuting people in Vista. I don't know if we've prosecuted anybody in the last 3 years. I have no idea. I hear nothing about that. I only got about 5 months left, so the filter is gone. I'm going to say whatever I want, and I'm going to call everybody out because this is the last thing I can do to try and keep my promise to the people of Vista to solve this. The greatest problem facing us is all these people destroying our community. When you poop, as a man did, 12 inches from the back door of my business, and one of my team members had to personally clean it up. When you break into our offices, as my offices have been burglarized in the last 12 months, when you don't feel like, you can enjoy your home. People are fleeing Southern California because government doesn't defend their property rights. When you cannot pump gas at any hour of the day without having somebody approach you who is a drug addict, who is asking for money or scamming you or threatening you, and a lot of ladies feel very threatened to have somebody come. Sometimes I do too. Why can we not pump gas? Shouldn't we be able to put gas in our car? I need the assistance of enforcement. Our deputies need to be aggressively doing their job. And the people who are suffering on the streets, addiction and criminality, should be running into the open arms of the great service providers in this room saying, hey, help me. Franklin is after me with the deputies, and they're going to put me in jail if I don't solve my problem. So when Hannah and Pete tell me that I better pay real close attention to what my caseworker is telling me, and I better think real hard about my decisions, and I better make it a success, because if I don't, then I'm going to go to special care or I'm going to go to jail. And maybe for a year, maybe for 3. Good people of Vista, if your leaders are not demanding jail as an alternative to refusal to accept treatment, do not vote for them again. That's all for now.
All right, our next item is discussion 1. This is going to be regarding the Vista program.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this discussion item will invite CEO, President, and Founder of Urban Street Angels, of Eric Lovett Mayers, to present an update and some proposed changes to the Vista House.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I have to say, as I get ready for my presentation, I've worked with a lot of cities, not just in this state, especially a standing committee of homelessness. And what this city does proactively and intentionally to serve those in need, and how you track, how you also hold accountable, how you adjust, is really exceptional. I don't think I can say another city that is so proactive in how y'all have done this. And this team and what you do as a council is just phenomenal. So let me say that as a not person of Vista, but as a partner of this city. I wish all the cities I worked with were like you. So with that being said, thank you for your time this morning. And we have some exciting opportunities. I think it kind of goes along with, Mr. Mayor, what I heard you saying, and then Madam Chair, Councilmember Melendez, kind of what you were talking about services and how sometimes we have to look at what we're doing and how we can alter in order to best fit the needs of our youth. And that's what I'm going to talk about today with Vista House. When we entered into this phenomenal property, we knew that we were going to need quite a bit of leveraged funds to make this thing happen. Thanks to the city presenting us rent-free with the house, we could not do it, but we've had to raise considerable amounts of money and partnership with the county to run the facility, which brings us also to the youth who are in our house, which are all behavioral health young people. Let me tell you just really quick what that means. You have to be diagnosed with a substance abuse issue or diagnosed with 2 mental illness and substance abuse. So it's a dual diagnosis to even be in this facility currently as it stands. And that is a county behavioral health program. What we've also seen is, in my 15 years experience with behavioral health in young people, is many times the support needed is a good bit more than those on the lower level of mental health concerns, and then also minor substance, but not some of the major substance abuse. So with that being said, we had to considerably up our staff and support at Vista House. And with that being said, also, with 16 beds, that's a low number of beds for the amount of support that we've had to provide over the last year. We have about 8 staff over a period of 24/7 that serve 16 beds. You can imagine the difference and disparage of expenses of what needs to happen there. With that being said, working in this demographic is quite normal for us, and we have quite considerably worked with hundreds of young people in behavioral health. We actually have 111 beds across the county of behavioral health, and then an additional 50 that have an SMI diagnosis. So with that being said, we've come to learn of a potential slight alteration in how we serve our youth at Vista House. The first being, we are set up for behavioral health policies, procedures, and also services better in our 2 East County and downtown locations. I find it very interesting that the conversation went where it went, even before today, with what Jonathan mentioned about how we provide services, because I think that's very important in how we report services. Tamara and I have had this conversation many times with the RTFH as well as the city, that there's so many dedicated services that every city, it's very hard to fund dedicated services in every city. But I think it's important to leverage services across our county in order to help solve our issue. So therefore, what we would like to propose is to serve our behavioral health youth in one of 3 of our downtown facilities. I have to say this, we are adding 54 new beds to our portfolio at Pacific Highway, opening July 1st. So I think also with the issues that we deal with in homeless altogether, I think it's important for us to continue to add beds, add services to support all countywide. So with that opening, it's going to allow us to not just serve our 16 behavioral health youth in Vista, but also an additional 40 or so overall through the county that really will benefit. When I say behavioral health services, I'm talking about things like occupational therapy. I'm talking about traditional therapy. I'm talking about holistic therapy. Many of you know what this is because you know what Urban Street Angels does. With this shift, it's going to allow us to decrease our staffing model of support. We're still having staff, still serving transitional age youth who are homeless or in danger of being homeless, but then also may still be experiencing mental health issues, but not to the severity that's going to meet behavioral health classification. I hope that makes sense. So with that transition, probably the last 8 months, I've been meeting with all college districts and community college districts, along with a lot of funders, not just from San Diego, but also from Vista and around. And we have an enormous need. It was really unbeknownst to me, but it's kind of shocking that we have a need of close to 22 to 25% of homeless students who are actively enrolled in some sort of education process, and they have nowhere to go. They still struggle with, like I mentioned, some behavioral health issues, but the mental health is a lot lower, and the services are a lot less in need and intense than what we can offer currently at Vista House. So we've got a great opportunity with private funders. We also have great opportunity with the basic needs of several colleges in North County area to really help take care of these youth. And that's what I'd like to talk about today, of how we could see the Vista House just slightly alter the use of our small 16-bed facility. It'd be great if it was about 50 beds. This conversation probably wouldn't be happening. But with 16 beds, it does make it quite difficult to, do those things. But we're excited about this shift because it's never been done. We've got other schools that are rapidly approaching us in different areas of the county going, wait, what? Is this a possibility? Because the need is so great. So I would love for this also to remain our prototype, not just what we've had at Vista House, but Vista House with also help support our homeless students. So with that, I know there's probably going to be a good bit of questions. I have presented to you, I sent to Jonathan last night, just so you could see an overall, with the sustainability from a business perspective, that it's hard to operate a facility like this. Not that we can't overcome difficulties, because we have, but just to kind of give you an idea of what year one was, which we are about to the end of, and then also year two kind of projections, and just so you can kind of see where our thought, and of course my thought as the CEO of Urban Street Angels, we're having to make some alterations and evolve and make some changes too. So with that, I'll open it up for some questions.
Thank you, Eric. I have a couple follow-up questions. So we have 16 beds at the Vista Transitional Aged Youth Shelter right now. I understand sustainability, and in this type of operation, a big challenge is capacity. So I just want to kind of share my background going into this discussion. As we were prepping for this meeting, I heard about the challenges that you're experiencing. I asked about increasing capacity. And we do have fire code issues in the building where it would have a high cost to upgrade. Jonathan, can you let me know that total again for upgrading our fire protection infrastructure inside the building?
Yeah, so the current capacity of 16 beds is limited by the occupancy classification of the site itself, according to the building code. To retrofit a fire response system that would allow us to increase the number of beds, I think it was to 26 is the next classification, something like $250,000. Generally, that kind of a sprinkler system that would have to be installed is installed with a new construction. Since this is a finished home, the retrofit would require a considerable amount of demolition to install the system and then reinstall the drywall and everything else. So roughly $250,000 was the last estimate we received around last October, I think, when we looked at it, yeah.
Mm-hmm. We don't have those upgrades planned. We don't have $250,000 allocated to make those upgrades. The purchase of this property has always been to be a service site. So that is my top priority, is to be able to retain this property as a service site. I want to get into the contract a little bit that we have with Urban Street Angels. What is the term of that contract? I wish I knew it backwards and forwards, but I don't have it in front of me.
The first year began last March, so we just renewed it again for year 2 this past March. We
Okay.
renew every 12 months.
When was our city staff made aware of your financial issues? Was it at the renewal of the contract? Is this the first time? This is the first time we're discussing it, and I did request the pro forma to be included today. So when did you become aware of these sustainability issues?
We've leveraged a lot of help for this in terms of our funding. I'm an optimist, so if there's a hole somewhere, I'm going to raise money to fill the hole. After close to $400,000 being raised for their first year, that's when I let my team know we need to look at some alternative changes. That happened probably in the March area after we looked through. And let me just say this too, Councilmember Melendez, that the contract officially started in March, but it also in our mind, timing, our first youth didn't enter into the program until August, September, because there were so many things in the house that had to be done. So in our mind, it kind of started there, but contractually it's March.
I understand. And I do see the gap here in private funding. This is where I, as a council member, have been extremely skeptical of private funding. There is often this promotion that, we don't need to use public funds. We can get private donors to take care of it. And then what happens when we're not able to secure that funding next year? There were obviously many coalitions of donors that came together. I was there at the ribbon cutting with you and, as the executive for Urban Street Angels and running this program, I'm concerned that that gap wasn't addressed sooner. And also with your announcement that you're going to be adding 54 new beds at a new location, I'm concerned of the practice of opening new projects without being able to sustainably continue the current ones. So for me, it's a really important discipline to have this level of communication long before we get to this point. And also long before any announcement of closures are to be made. I've received some updates from community organizations that have heard from your managers at the House that services are going to be ending July 1st. And that would be a violation of our contract. So I'm going to need some kind of information, explanation as to why that was made as an announcement and where our current contract stands before we decide to change the field of services, before we decide to change the population. I need to understand the current status of our contracts.
So thank you for those comments. And in the course of, I think at the very beginning, it was very interesting because I referenced it was the first RFP that I applied for that there was no money attached to it. So when it comes to leveraging funds and how Urban Street Angels does our business, that's something that, depending on if it's government funds or whatever, then we allocate, and we've been pretty successful for the last 15 years. We've had to allocate, and we have to go where the funding is, to your point. So it just so happens that the funding that we had for these new beds is taking us into another direction. I think also to your point earlier with Jonathan and the mayor is that without funding from the city, it does make it more difficult. I think just having funding from one place can be a detriment on either side, to your point. I think being able to leverage both is very important. And I thought with just the use of the property, we can make this work with private money. But we haven't, and we've actually had county money help leverage that, as you see, behavioral health. But it's pretty low, and it goes back to your very first point, Madam Chair, and that's capacity. We've also learned that to run a behavioral health program, capacity it can't be 20 beds. It needs to be 40, 50 beds, like we have in our other, as you can imagine, staff oversight with that. I think where we are now, we have, my staff, we still have youth in the house. We've just stopped intakes, to your comment. And our plan is to have, we've got to make the decision sooner than later in order to make it in this facility. But also, I think providing those solutions before I came to you with a problem or an issue, I think was also very important.
I appreciate that. It sounds like the decision has already been made to end services, as that has been announced to community partners. So at this time, I do not know the status of our contract. Jonathan, can you speak to this at all?
To the contract itself?
Yeah, because
itself is still
I
active.
have the notice that services are going to be ending July 1st. Our contracts restarted in March.
The contract is active.
The contract has, sorry, repeat that?
Contract is active.
Contract is active.
Yes.
Okay. If the contract is active, then why are we announcing that we're ending services?
We're announcing that we are altering services. We're not ending
Okay.
services.
I would love for you to go back and do a round circle with your staff to make sure we're all on the same page, because for me to have heard that from the community before we get to have a discussion is discouraging. Also, I understand what you're talking about when it comes to the cost of behavioral health services and the lack of private dollars. The direct personnel is over $400,000, right? Similarly matching the private funding that was available. That first year of private funding really made it possible for the services at Viste House to be high acuity behavioral health focused. My hope and priority, and I'm an optimist too, is that we can continue to provide for transitional aged youth. If we have to assess what level of acuity we can perform, then that's a realistic conversation that we can have. But I have to sound the alarm bells that an announcement has been made that the services are ending, when it is every intention of the council with our current contract and with Urban Street Angels in our current contract that we are continuing services. So what is the current financial reality for Urban Street Angels and your ability to operate Viste House? I'm hearing that you've had many months of conversations with colleges, right? How is that funding balance? And if we're no longer providing behavioral health services, are we going to be losing county funding, right? There's going to be some ebbs and flows. What are we losing here and what are we gaining?
I think the first thing that we're gaining, I think, for support of our youth, let's speak to the individuals who are in need of the support, and that is we're going to be gaining a much more robust amount of services that they will need in the current diagnosis of behavioral health with the county, which also is changing as we speak, as I'm sure that y'all are aware, with Medi-Cal and how they're funded and the requirements of our youth in behavioral health, which is attached to productivity and work per week. And so even some of our current behavioral health youth will need to have access to more trades, more employment, in order even to qualify for county behavioral health starting July 1st. I think that's also been a part of our conversation as a team, as we've seen new HUD funding rules change, like in round 8 that you may be aware of, that has a work requirement of 20 hours a week per youth for them to remain into housing at all. So with those changes, we've had to adjust a little bit. I will meet more with our team about our communication of what is being put out there, because it was never our intention that we're closing, but just altering. So thank you for that feedback. That was not the intention. I will address that.
And to that point, if there are gaps, right, just as there were gaps in our opening, right, we're several months into the opening, we still didn't have any clients. I want to be made aware of that sooner rather than later. Of course, pending funding availability, you might not be able to perform on the contract. So we might have to have realistic conversations about the viability of this contract. City of Vista, we are not putting any funding towards programming other than to provide a free space for rent. But sounds like you have a plan for the pivot towards services offered to college-aged TAY, the services that can be provided there. You haven't described really any additional losses, but you're finishing up this first year with some deficits. And obviously, we're not going to be able to continue in this way. So there's going to be some consequences. There may be a gap where there are several weeks or months where services are not provided. I want to be made aware of that before that happens. I want to be made aware of the plan of when we're going to start enrolling again. Because if there's a pause in enrollment because we're changing our population, I need to know when we can expect those services to be provided once again. And I just think it needs to be an ongoing conversation because things are changing, right? Eligibility might change for these, the members in the House, right? And the population that they kind of fall under. So yeah, I'm concerned. I'm concerned that we're not going to be able to provide services. But ultimately, the provision of this property has, for my intention, and I know many members of the council, we didn't buy this property to be a pretty property to look at. We purchased this property with the intention that it could be used for services. I wish that there was more of a will from private donors. I know as CEO, that is something you are working on constantly. And I'm sure that when you weren't able to identify those funds, that's when we started to have conversations about population changes. Is that correct?
It is.
Okay.
And also to your point, I think having the opportunity to remain in Vista, because I think this is such a powerful program, working with homeless youth, I think, to the same point that you made from the city's perspective is the same perspective that I have from Urban Street Angels, and that is, can we afford to, maintain this, stay here, or could we pivot?
I would like to be able to retain these services in Vista. It does grieve me, the recommendation that our current enrolled members would be, sent to a different place in San Diego instead of closer to their, home base.
Not all of them.
Not all of them.
Some of them are being permanently housed in Vista.
Okay, so we're continuing to offer those services for, the resolution of their homelessness.
100%.
Okay, well, again, I have concerns. I want to have more communication in the future when there are program-related funding changes, because that is the hope is that we can sustain programs here. And I appreciate you being able to be transparent and have a back and forth on this, and that we can be on the same page as to what the goal is. And I'll express my goal to the committee and to the public is that Vista House continues to provide services to transitional aged youth. I think that's really important. I want to turn over to my colleague and see any additional comments and questions. Thank you.
So this was a really unique partnership. I got to tour your downtown facility, I don't know, about 4 years ago, maybe it's about 5 years ago. And you and I started conversations about bringing Urban Street Angels to Vista. And we looked at properties and we talked about setting up the, what do we call them? The
Pallet shelters.
Yeah, the
Tiny
pallet, the
homes.
pallet shelters. I wasn't in love with that idea, but then I got a call from a realtor who said, hey, I'm a realtor and I'm selling a memory care facility in Vista. It's a really weird property, like a 16-bedroom house. And, could you guys use this thing in any way? And I went and took a look at it, and they only wanted like $2.2 million. Was as a gorgeous property. And I said, man, maybe this is where Urban Street Angels could have a home in Vista. But you had you weren't, you hadn't identified all the funding. And this was just a way in my mind, and I convinced the council to do this. But the thing I like most about the program was that we weren't paying for it other than to provide a one-time capital asset for you to use. And I love the fact that you're out there scrapping to find the dollars. And I know that's hard. And so I thank you for being out there doing what you do to find the dollars. I did not realize, and I should have had more conversation with you. I did not realize that the population that you intended to serve was this, am I saying it correctly, high acuity population that needed a lot of intensive supervision. That was never my vision. But it was also not my vision to micromanage what you were doing to the point of telling you which particular transition age youth and with what specific, challenges. We know they all have challenges. They're homeless. If they didn't have challenges, they probably wouldn't be homeless. So I didn't get into a real specific conversation with you about that. Had a lot of trust and confidence in you and the other people working with Urban Street Angels after having met you, having, shared a number of conversations, seen the program. But I love this model where we provide a one-time capital asset for your use and say, hey, if you can make a successful program here. So to get the timeline and history, in all fairness to Urban Street Angels, really, it was the city made the decision to make this asset available, and we said, look, we have no money to operate it as a city, but we've got an operator we think can do something good here. So this, more than even some of our other partnerships, I know like GFS put some money into their program, and a lot of our providers are providing funding, but really Urban Street Angels is providing 80% of the funding, maybe more, maybe 85%. So and I'm not going to say in defense, but that is the reality of what we got here. Did you get funding from the county for these high acuity youths? Is that why you went in that direction?
We did. It's a per day, per bed type.
Gotcha. That makes sense to me. And there's been some realignment in those resources from the county?
There has been. There's been a little bit of realignment. They're considered, July 1st is considerable realignment. And then secondly, also the amount of beds, the capacity.
The thing that really drew me, I said this when we very first started our conversations in Vista about homelessness. We've got a program that I have a lot of concerns about, homelessness prevention, which is where we give people money who we think might be homeless in the future. And I asked staff at one point, I said, do you own a functional crystal ball? And they looked at me like I was insane. And I said, well, but who's going to be home. You can tell who, if we don't give them money, they're going to be homeless. You're sure of it. So obviously you can tell the future. Because the truth is, most people have family. I mean, my family will never be homeless because I've always got a couch or a floor they can sleep on. I probably, no matter what my financial circumstances in life are, I'm never going to be $3,000 away from being homeless because I will literally do anything to avoid sleeping outside. However, so we've got these programs, and I said, hey, how about instead of the glass box cash grab giveaway machine, how about we invest in aged out foster youth who have an overwhelming incidence of homelessness, and it's one population that I can statistically predict with scientific reality will experience homelessness at a greater probability than the rest of the population. And these are children who never got a fair shake in life because their parents weren't able or willing to provide for them in the way that every child should. And when I saw that you were serving that community, I said, hey, this is a community. I mean, I tear up just thinking about a kid that doesn't get the upbringing or the, what God intended for every child. So I love what you do. I will always be supportive of the TAY mission. These kids 18 through 24, a lot of them just, these kids got just a raw deal, dysfunctional households, and they deserve an opportunity. And I see the way you provide a loving program for them. And I know you're doing it with duct tape and fishing wire. And I just love that because, look, you've got your funders like Lucky Duck that come in and they're looking at what you're doing and they're making a decision about whether or not it's really helping somebody. And if they think it is, they're going to continue to fund it. Yeah, I understand you're taking some county money. Probably I would have agreed with you from the outset, although I understand, look, it's a great opportunity to help people, and you stretched and you reached and you made it work. And one of the ways you did it was bringing in the county funding for these high acuity individuals. But I could agree with you, and probably would have opined had I known a year ago that probably would be problematic. But I'm just delighted if the property can be used and if your program can provide for anybody in that transition age youth. So the fact that you're sort of just fine tuning within the TAY community which group you're going to serve. Did you know that this was a high acuity population? I confess ignorance. I did not realize that.
Yeah, I understood that.
Yeah. But more high acuity than the entire TAY population? Like within the TAY population, this was amongst the highest?
I knew that this had a behavioral health focus, which is where the costs, it's not necessarily TAY itself that has the high costs, it's the behavioral health services that are being offered. I support this change, and I think that we should stay in lockstep because the city of Vista continues to acquire assets, right? Some with even higher capacity than what is at our current Vista location. So if there is an opportunity for us to provide higher capacity services, behavioral health beds for transitional aged youth, I would love for us to continue to explore that. But seeing the sustainability challenge that we have in front of us, coming into this meeting, I absolutely knew that I would want to support what you're doing. And I'm glad we can be on the same page about communications and about understanding where the gaps are, because there could be, if we have this information sooner, that could also give us an opportunity to pull in some support, yeah? So that we don't have to put it all on our service providers to be working on their own. We are pretty scrappy in the city of Vista. We've been able to secure so many different sources of funding to address homelessness. And this situation, you are able to find a really creative solution, working with colleges, getting assistance for those housing costs because those students are receiving benefits. And I think that that's a great way to pivot. But on my end, I don't think we need to completely lose sight of the high need behavioral health for TAY, because that is something that we absolutely can try again in the future.
Yeah, I think that particular property where it's situated, and we had some initial problems, and I haven't heard any. It seems like they've been taken care of. Praise God, with the neighbors.
We staffed up.
What's that?
We staffed up.
That's great. Yeah, but I think this is Great. I just want to underscore that I expected you to have nothing but continuous financial problems from the outset. That was the plan. When you and I discussed this, you told me flatly, I don't know where the money's coming from, but we're going to go out and we're going to find it. And I love that. And I literally, this should be the model. What if all the ERF funding goes away? What if all the state money goes away? This program could survive in the city of Vista because we're not providing any ongoing program support. We're only providing the use of an asset that really I don't think we're doing minimal maintenance. So our expenses are nil here. And I viewed our partnership, and I still do, as a model for how we provide services in Vista. This is literally teaching a man to fish. We're providing a sustaining asset to be used, and you're going out saying, hey, I've got this beautiful facility, and you could literally, and you did, you brought donors to that facility and said, look at this beautiful place. Look at how we could help young people here. And they open their heart when they see that. And so I'm going to not criticize, but I'm going to celebrate that you're having financial struggle, because I imagine you've had financial struggle since the first day you opened. You're in a nonprofit. I mean, that's the point. If I can be helpful to you, if I can help you reach out to donors, I'll personally make calls. I'll invite people to come see what you're doing, whatever I can do to help. But I'm just grateful that you accepted this crazy partnership we dreamed up together and said, hey, let's see what we can do to help some young people that deserve an opportunity. I think it's great. So the fact that you need to slightly, alter the original program is great, because I don't recall, I guess I'm getting old enough, I'm forgetting a lot of stuff, but I don't recall that the council had a real in-depth discussion about which segment of the Tay community you were going to serve, just that it was going to be the transition age youth. I kept stressing that I was hopeful that, some of our aged out foster youth, and I know a lot of them are in that group, would have access to your program and these services. We're moving forward with Casa de Amparo, who's going to have a similar, Tay community to be served here in Vista. One of the other things I think is worthy of mentioning again that you talk about, and I've heard before, is we have a better opportunity to prevent a lifetime cycle of homelessness if we intervene between the ages of 18 and 24. So really looking at how do you interrupt the cycle of repetitive chronic homelessness. It really is about stabilizing them before homelessness becomes a way of life. So, just kudos for what you do. It's awesome. And, God bless you.
Well, to both of you and the group, I think for us, we want to be in Vista because of what I said at the very onset. I think what you're doing here and these amazing partners, it's important for us to remain here. I think also not just for our youth, but also the partners that we can continue to grow and engage in and show others how it's done. And so I'm open for more capacity building, and that's why I'm standing here today with not a message of gotta go. It's, I want to be a part of this, and we still feel like there's such a need, and we want to be a part of that in this city along with y'all.
I'm so relieved that you're going to be staying with us and for the long term. And you have our full support. And I'm glad to hear Mayor is offering to support bringing back some of this private funding. I know he's very involved with Lucky Duck Foundation, and I'm sad to see that there's not support this year, but we can build capacity, right? This type of program has staying power, and I would love to see more organizations, philanthropic organizations, support what you're doing. Because clearly you made a really big impact in the last year. And I'm excited to see what comes of this next group, this next cohort that comes through. I think it's going to be fantastic. I appreciate you working with us and our city staff And it's just neighbors, right? It's the folks that are there now are our neighbors. We have the opportunity to support you. And I say this to all of our service providers, and I say this to our staff. Please let us know what you need and where you're at so that we can try to bolster the work that you're doing.
Awesome.
Any further comments?
Thanks, Eric. That cohort, that's a 9-month cohort that ends in July, and then you'll begin the new. So nobody's being exited mid-program. Everybody's there exactly. Everybody's expectation was met.
Yeah, that behavioral health timing ends, but then just with a few short weeks of pause to get the place back up and going, we could put youth right back in.
Great. Thank you.
Good news. Glad to hear that. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just add, this is agendized for the city council to discuss further on August 25th so that we can adopt any amendments as appropriate.
Fantastic. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to our final item. This is a general homelessness update.
Would it be okay, Madam Chair, if we were to hear from our cops deputies came out of the field to give us an update? Would it be okay
yes,
if we
please. We'll
heard an update
start
from
our
them?
updates with our cops team.
Thanks for coming to give us an update. I guess Imelda sent a message and said the mayor's on a roll and he wants to hear from the cops deputies.
We requested your presence. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good morning.
We just want to hear what's happening on the street right now. I expressed earlier this morning before you got here frustration that I heard directly from deputies that are members of the cops team about not being able to use the jail and about citations issued, that there's no follow-up. Nobody goes to court. Nobody's ever prosecuted. And, you know, I think you remember which deputy it was that brought that frustration and concern to me. And it's like, Mayor, what difference is it going to make if I write this person another ticket? If they're high and I get in a fight with them and I'm injured, don't go home tonight, to give this person a ticket, what's the point? And that's real hard for me as I'm in this, like, I'm not running for anything now. So I just get to be completely honest. And one of the things that I want to fight for is you. I'm very frustrated about the lack of jail access for misdemeanor offenders and what that does to your, what difference does it make if you write somebody a misdemeanor citation if they're never held to account? If they don't show up, if they fail to appear for court and, the bench warrant is still not a bookable warrant, what difference does it make? The real question is cleaning up the visual incidents of people that are living on our streets, because before you got here, we talked about we're up 20% year over year versus the rest of the county. We're up 9% in Vista from last year, but the county as a whole is down 11%. Vista's up 20% over the rest of the county. So what I'm asking everybody, I put it directly on Jonathan, but it's more on me than anybody else and the council members and the city manager. It's on us because we're in charge. We're the decision makers. And so we've got to get you who are on the ground level, who are program managers. And one of the things that I pointed out before you got here is I'm not seeing, you guys are doing a lot, but I'm not seeing you being supported, the deputy specifically in Vista being supported by the jail and the prosecutor. If charges aren't brought and people don't enter either jail or a diversionary treatment program like drug court, or they don't go to special care, what difference does it make? All you have as a power is literally to harass somebody. Maybe you put them in handcuffs for a few minutes, but you can't even book them in jail. I know I'm throwing a lot at you, and some of it is policy, some of it's political, but I got to make this point because we're spending tens of millions of dollars on services. We want homelessness to go down. Instead, it's going up. And it's my considered belief after 12 years on this council that our inability to effectively enforce, and that really is jails and prosecutor, means that our service providers are saying, we want to help you, and people are saying, we're good. We need pressure with discipline and order and law enforcement to compel people to make the decision to say yes and to work the programs that are being offered by the rescue mission, by the navigation center. So what are you seeing out there, avoiding all the politics? What are you seeing out there in the work you're doing? Is your observation that encampments are up or down? And tell us your experience relevant to some of the things I've mentioned that you feel comfortable opining on.
Let me to start by introducing for the public
Yes.
record Deputies Rabati, Walters, and McKemmy.
Thank you.
So there were a lot of points there that you brought up. I can't necessarily discuss all of them based on the information that I have at this point, based on my position. However, there are a lot of factors that have to be taken into place. Every time we make an arrest, we have to follow state law, county law, city and municipal codes. The most of the people that we encounter on a daily basis, a lot of the time, whether they're transient or not, out in the field, tend to be the habitual transients of the area, whether they are habitual drug users, whether it's from mental illness or just general stubbornness of getting used to the lifestyle of being homeless. We do encounter a lot of people that do access services, and they actually do want to leave that kind of lifestyle and get out of the position that they're in. SD Rescue is amazing at getting that done. They're very fast, they're very effective at getting those people resources that they need. What we're seeing on our end is a combination of factors of why they may decide to stay. We make the arrest. That arrest could either be for felony drug charges, it could be felony violence, it could be for misdemeanor violence. They go to jail, the process is completed, or whatever process that's been decided on by the courts or by the system, and they're released. The reason they stay, variety of factors. It could be the people they know in the area, it could be their local sources for drugs, it could be some sort of relation to family. What we're dealing with on a daily basis is a lot of times those habitual people that refuse to leave the city of Vista for whatever reason, who refuse to get out of that transient lifestyle.
So when somebody has committed a felony, or you suspect them of committing a felony, right now you can book them into the jail, right?
Correct, yes.
If you suspect somebody of committing a nonviolent, like a drug misdemeanor, is that a bookable offense right now?
On the flat surface, if it's whether it's Prop 36 related, just a regular misdemeanor possession charge, no, it's not bookable.
So describe to me some of the things that you encounter in the field, particularly relevant to our transient population, that are bookable, and give me the classification, whether it's a misdemeanor crime or a felony. But I think basically, are all felonies, regardless of being violent or nonviolent, they're all bookable, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So really, we're just talking about misdemeanors. Can you give us example of some of those things? I mean, first of all, it is a misdemeanor in the city of Vista as recodified by this council under municipal misdemeanor to be illegally camping. So that ought to be like, what would you say generally about that in terms of we've recodified that, it's been on the books for 50 some years in Vista. Does that law work, or is that a joke? Be honest with me. I got no feelings left in this. I just trying to get to the truth. Like, does it help?
Answer concerning where it sits.
I mean, does it help you? First of all, are you able to enforce it? Do you see any consequence meted out to anybody other than you harassing them long enough to write them a ticket?
We're able to enforce it, however, it's not a bookable offense.
So it's not bookable.
It becomes a court date.
So you give them a citation, and they're supposed to appear in court, and we know overwhelmingly they do not. If you re-encounter that person and they have failed to appear for their court date, and they have a bench warrant for that misdemeanor, is that bookable?
No, it's not.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just, as long as I have the power to do it, I got to keep calling out the fact that we have people out there committing crimes. Is a misdemeanor crime a crime?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So that's one of the things I'm challenging the system for the rest of my life about. They're calling them justice-involved people. I call them criminals. If you commit a crime, you're a criminal. And we need people with enough common sense and plain talk to say that. You're innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. So you can be a suspect, but if you're convicted, you're a criminal. I think we need to lock people up who are criminals. Or we could prescribe a course of treatment like drug court or conservatorship care, either inpatient or outpatient. I don't want to put everybody in jail, But if jail is not an alternative, it is my personal opinion after 12 years doing this as a council person that they're not going to say yes to the voluntary treatment and services. There are too many people that you're encountering on a regular basis who realize there is zero consequence as long as they don't commit a violent misdemeanor. Are there any violent misdemeanors? There are, right?
Yes, there are.
A misdemeanor battery. That's bookable, right?
Basic misdemeanor battery, no, it's not.
Oh, it's not?
However, misdemeanor domestic violence, misdemeanor exhibiting a deadly weapon, some other cases as well.
Those are bookable. Yeah. So some violent misdemeanors are bookable, but if I were to assault somebody, that wouldn't be bookable. If it was misdemeanor.
It's based on the injury. So a misdemeanor level battery can typically be like a push or a punch, but typically that's not bookable.
Yeah. I think the general public is so surprised to learn the level of crimes that are not bookable, and that failure to appear in court results in a non-bookable warrant. Because most of us would imagine as law-abiding citizens that if we do not show up to a court date and the judge issues a bench warrant for we would think the U.S. Marshals are coming to drag us by our toenails to the courtroom, and keeping us in jail until. It is appalling and shocking, the realization that your authority as deputies to enforce the laws that this council creates, that the state legislature has created, that the people voted for, 2/3 of the people of California voted for Prop 36, but yet your authority to act on the people's authority is basically, it's feckless. If all you can do is write them a ticket, it's a piece of paper, and then they don't show up to court. They flout they flout the judge's authority, which is also the people's authority. The authority that you wield is not your own authority; it's the people's authority. It's been invested in you. All of the people's authority, and it's not your fault. You're not the policymakers. You're not the politicians, but the judges and the policymakers have failed you. Because you, more than anybody as deputies, because we have asked you to go into harm's way and to contact people who are not in their right mind. They're not. They're mentally ill. They're on drugs. Often, and I've been in your company and presence when you've been challenged by people who are armed. They're armed. It's scary. And your personal safety has been put on the line to interact with this community. But yet the politicians don't back you up when you do issue a citation and they don't show up to court. We don't even give you the authority to jail that person. That's outrageous. That's an offense to you and to all who wear the badge. It's an offense to the good people of our city and of the entire state of California. I'm not using you as a problem, but somebody's got to say what I'm saying. I'm not running for re-election. I got nothing in this, but as a private citizen trying to keep his promise to the people of Vista, somebody has got to say that the people who are using drugs repeatedly, our deputies, have contacted dozens of times. You know these people intimately. You see them day in and day out. And we have failed to give you the authority to take this person off the streets. Instead, you have to reapproach them with a citation where there will never be any consequence. This is something that if this is not shared with the general public, we will never solve this problem. So thanks for saying what you can say. I know you're not part of the political process, so you're limited in what you can opine. But is there anything else? What do you think the incidence of people living in encampments in Vista, whether it's Caltrans property, and could you speak to Caltrans versus non-Caltrans property? Do you think, is it up in your estimation? You're the ones in the cops unit dealing with this day in and day out. Do you feel that it's up right now, or do you feel that it's down? What are you seeing in terms of hotspots? What can you tell me about people living outdoors in Vista that shouldn't be?
I can't speak to the overall analysis of the entire area. That's usually what our crime analysts are for. However, based on anecdotal evidence that we've seen, general encampments are down. However, contacts with the habitual people in those areas are up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, that's good. That means you're doing your job, right? That's good. I appreciate that. After Madam Chairman has finished with questions, if you deputies need to get back to the field, I appreciate you coming to give us an update. We look forward to maybe getting some more updates from the sergeant and the captain on these questions at our next opportunity.
Thank you for being here. We typically have these meetings with our whole number of service providers, and you as our COPS deputies are on the ground, meeting people face to face and responding to criminal issues. We know that there is an enforcement piece to all aspects of civic life, and I really appreciate you partnering with our service providers to find solutions, be it shelter, be it responding to domestic violence issues. And so we appreciate you being here. And one of the things I relayed to our service providers at the last item was that we are here to provide resources for our partners and our service providers. We have a contract with the San Diego County Sheriff's Department that allows us to utilize your excellent services. And we would like to be able to continue that. And if there are any services that you feel like you're not able to render, any ways that you're not able to perform your duties fully, we would like to hear what those are so that we can continue to advocate for holistic, robust services in the city of Vista. And, you know, there has been a few conversations about funding. One of the things that comes to mind is how does our COPS team, our deputies, overlap with the encampment resolution funds? Jonathan, did you have any information on that, how the enforcement part of it works with our encampment resolution funding?
Yeah, of course. So with our biweekly biological preserve overlay walks, we do have a team that goes out every 2 weeks, which includes the San Diego Rescue Mission, our community improvement team, the COPS deputies, often county social workers if they're available. Anything else I'm missing? That's about right. That's about right, yep.
And do you guys work with PERT as well?
So we work with PERT if the need calls for it. So PERT is a county resource. Excuse me. Any deputy or even officer can request PERT if they feel like it's required.
Okay, and thank you for being part of those biweekly walkthroughs. I think that that's been a really big component to how we've been able to sustain clearance in those encampments, is just being present on a biweekly basis. That's great. Thank you for being here. Any further questions, Mayor?
I thank you, the city manager's office, for, I expressed frustration that our COPS deputies weren't participating regularly in this, but it's not just our line deputies and supervisors, but we also need our captain and the sergeant and our analyst, because we want to, we want to be able to engage in what is the state of enforcement with regard to the homelessness and transient problem, because this is that we have this point in time count that's in the newspaper. People read about that, but really people are giving us a report card every day about the number of people they see when they go to the grocery store. Is somebody approaching me at the gas pump? And this is the thing that we really have to affect. We have to reduce the number of people who are living in places they shouldn't and doing things they shouldn't, because this creates a feeling of unsafety in our community. And it's people, my wife, and a lot of people want to feel safe in Vista, and they should have a right to do that. So that's why I want to, from the leadership, and I appreciate you coming out of the field to come give us some thoughts, but I want a leadership level conversation, and these meetings are only happening 4 times a year now? Yeah,
correct.
4 times a year. So it's not an excessive burden for the leadership, our command leadership, to be present, and a couple of deputies who are, at where the rubber meets the road, also. But I just wanted to, in case you weren't aware, I appreciate you reaching out, but I wasn't aware that you were going to be asked to come in out of the field right now, but I'm glad that you did, and I'm glad that you're able to share some thoughts, and I appreciate that.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, be safe out there today.
All right, continuing our general homelessness updates. I will just say that I have a certain end here at 11, but I will leave it to the mayor if there's any service providers, we're not able to get through by the time that I have to go. But let's go ahead and get started on the general presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. So this final discussion item will provide the service provider updates. Management analyst, Ms. Langen, will facilitate the updates, but we will jump ahead and start with Vista updates first.
So quick overview of the updates that are going to be provided. So as was determined at the February 2026 Standing Committee on Homelessness meeting, each provider will share updates both on the previous quarter, so January 1st through March 31st, 2026, and cumulative data since inception for each program.
I'll peruse through this. As you can see, my team updated me as well on this presentation. Since January through March with our 12 exits, as you can see. I don't know how fast you want me to move through this, but Madam Chair, I can move pretty rapidly.
Yeah, top level, what you think is most important, and I think we also have this available for us to reference.
Perfect. Our negative exits, just so you know, I think that's always important for me to know, and that is we actually had 2 abandonments that actually left the program and just chose not to come back, and I always hate those. I would rather know where they exit to or what they're doing or how we can serve them better. Demographic broken down in race, ethnicity, and gender. Our referral sources intakes, I love across the board that we work with so many different agencies to get our youth in. I would like to highlight that our focus that we're seeing for most youth experiencing homelessness are from 0 to 12 months. That is really what our data shows us in general, but it also as well as here in Vista and in North County. We want to really focus on them so they don't turn into chronic homeless. Length of stay, as you can see, we had this last quarter a really large focus between 0 and 90 days because we had a lot of youth that were able to get into housing and really serve them out of our transitional set, with a few that we still work on. You can see our overall calls of service. With our total clients served, and you can see, as we referred to at the beginning of this conversation, the start of Vista House and some of our challenges versus where we are now with our exits and what we're seeing our youth being able to produce and really utilize their resources. Everything from trades, and I'll share a couple successes with you. Also, our demographics served. This is our total intake enrollments from all of our referring partners. Enrollments as well, and this is also number of youth across the continuum, as we see the majority being 0 to 12 months. Our length of stay is also still within that 0 to 90 days, is really, and that's the purpose of this day, is if we can really stabilize them, help them find their way, get them into a very supportive type housing, also jobs or trades, then it allows us to be able to utilize and turn the bed over so we can serve more youth.
Hey, Eric, real quick.
Yes.
You mentioned the challenge of the 20 hours a week of employment, and it's employment, education, or volunteerism. And I mean, couldn't they volunteer 20 hours a week cleaning up the property, preparing meals in the kitchen? I mean, is it really that hard for them to have 20 productive hours in their week? Explain that to me, as it literally does not compute to me.
Yeah, so it's a little more challenging than that.
Yeah, tell me.
They can definitely do volunteer work. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, they're going to require a volunteer outside of your organization, so they want to see some sort of productive hours. Mm-hmm. What we're tying it to is everything leading them up to our trade school programs, our education or orientations, as well as work. These are new standards coming down from HUD too. So, but it's also tied into Medi-Cal. and we're not anti that. It's just as a team, we have to be very intentional on how we track it and what we encourage them to do. I think it goes back to the questions like this. Do you want to do this versus can I sign you up for this or this? And I think that's exactly kind of where we're adjusting as well.
Thank you.
Income to entry, as we've seen, the income range, back to your point, Mr. Mayor, those who have been justice involved, foster youth status as well, and then the employment education piece. This is overall calls for service since inception, which most occurred our first few months of setup. And then just most recently, we have 2 youth that will be graduating, but I'm just share one story. I love Pete's story at the very beginning, but I want to share one story of Zayden as we close this. And that is, he was a young man that was with us for quite some time, fell out of the traditional education system, got involved in a solar certificate program training, showed dedication, tried a couple jobs after that because there was no pathway to employment through this certificate program. But he just landed his full-time job with Amazon and now has landed in an apartment in Vista through a rapid rehousing program, but also his own place that he chose. And him with 3 others will be getting into their own apartment in July. So, but it takes some time. I've always said this. Sometimes you've got to believe in somebody before they believe in themselves, as you've heard from Pete and you'll hear from this rescue mission. And I think that's what the power of this home has been able to do. That's all for me.
Thank you very much.
All right, next up, we will welcome Gary Kreit from Interfaith Community Services to share about VHAP C2. The Vista Emergency Housing Assistance Program Category 2 prevents homelessness for Vista residents who meet the HUD Category 2 definition of homeless. This is when residents would be lost within 14 days of an application for assistance. No subsequent residence has been identified, and the household lacks resources or support networks needed to obtain other housing. Households meeting these criteria may receive up to $5,000 for up to 3 months of assistance, including arrears. The VHAP C2 supports include individual case management to support getting clients back on track.
Hi, how's everybody doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm excited to present after hearing some of the committee's views. So as you can see by the slides, we're reporting for the 3rd quarter. In January, we provided almost $11,000 worth of assistance. In February, we provided about $15,000. In March, we provided nearly $21,000 of assistance. But I think I'd want to talk about the number of households assisted and the number of Vista adults and children that were assisted, because I think that this program works. This program did exactly what it was intended to do. If you want to go to the next slide so we can talk about the cumulative, you can see that as of March 26, we assisted 32 households from becoming homeless, which included 50 adults, 53 children, so 103 Vista residents didn't end up on a by name list. 103 Vista residents didn't have to get in line for a shelter bed. With the support of the committee, Jonathan and his team, 103 residents didn't become homeless. And I think it's kind of like a trickle down. If we can start preventing it at the beginning so that my colleagues aren't burdened with more people becoming homeless. I think more people are becoming homeless than we have
Here's
that's
the thing.
available.
Here's the thing. I don't get to meet any of these people. I don't know anything about them. You need to tell the public who these people are, the individual experiences, because I'm going to be honest with you. I got to put this on blast, okay? Without giving us the information, without us being able to see, telling me that because you have an eviction notice that you're definitely going to be living on the streets, no, I will not. okay? And most people, if they're going to get evicted, are not going to be living on the street. You wouldn't, would you? Now, some people would. We understand that. But there's an attempt by all concerned, and I'm going to accept responsibility for not having been plainer in my speak on this before now. Handing out $5,000 to everybody who's having a crisis is something that this city did not do as of about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. We've begun to do it. It's available to a limited number of people. It goes very quickly. Now we're up to, I think, millions of dollars on this now, right? What are we, $2.5 million for this now? $2.5 million. It was only $250,000 a couple of years ago. This is from the people who believe that everybody ought to get a free house, that there ought to, everybody ought to have government housing or basic income, and this idea, that a service provider gets to choose who is worthy and who is not. The program eligibility requirements are so high that most people who could fog a mirror would qualify. So everybody reach out to Interfaith. I don't hear any of the individual stories. So you can't fault me for not knowing whether or not everybody receiving the money will definitely be at the shelter's door. Because I don't know that. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm definitely not saying that you're saying something that's not true. What I'm saying is I just don't know about that. These are new programs. This is part of what I call the cash cannon, okay, or the government glass box cash grab machine. That's what this is. We got a phone booth in the lobby. We put $2.5 million in it, and everybody gets 60 seconds. We're going to turn the fan motor on. Okay? I've said that many times privately. I'm going to say it publicly now because there ain't nothing you can do to me. Okay? I can say the truth. This is the truth. I don't have any transparency into this. And all of the privacy rights in the world have been claimed. Why I got to give away $2.5 million of public money and don't have any real transparency into who gets it, or whether or not they have a relapse, or whether or not they have another housing crisis. What I said, a great leader of this city told me, Mayor, it's just a structural deficit. It's only a structural deficit. I said, I don't have any idea what a structural deficit is. You know what a structural deficit is? I'd never heard of it. Had you?
No.
It means when you plan to spend more money than you plan to receive. You intended to have a deficit. Unfortunately, for many people who are having financial crises in their life, the truth of the matter is they have a structural deficit. They're spending more money than they intend to receive based on their income. You can give that person $5,000 and you will delay, but you will not prevent homelessness because if they have a structural deficit. Now, I asked my colleagues at the time we first created this program if we could pair it with a pledge, not a requirement, just a pledge to participate in financial literacy training. And do you know what I was told by my colleagues? No. They wouldn't even ask people to make a verbal promise to participate in a program for budgeting.
But before I have to head out, I just want to make a quick comment to the stats that are provided by the service provider. There is a reflection here of the emergency situation that warranted the funds. We have 3 categories: employment-related income loss, and that is about half of the circumstances. Also, unexpected increase in expense, and then change in family dynamic is a smaller portion. For this unexpected increase in expense, could you dive into that a little bit more? Is that a rent increase? What would that be?
I actually have a couple of examples of that because I anticipated that question. So the couple of examples that I gave that I have here are these clients are living paycheck to paycheck, and if their car breaks down, sometimes they've made the decision to pay the car bill so they can get to work, but then they ended up becoming rent on later on the rent, and that builds up. Also,
But that's 95% of all people in this country living paycheck to paycheck. 95%. And 95% of them, if they had an emergency expense, would have to decide what they're not going to pay. And here's the problem with the policy, and this is not aimed at you as the service provider. It's at the policy, and I have been too filtered in not sharing my honest opinion, and I apologize to the people of Vista for not having shared my honest opinion about this more forcefully, because I have raised these concerns, but I have not been as transparent as I am going to be right now. We cannot afford to give $5,000 to every person in the city. Cannot afford it. Cannot afford to give it to 95%. Cannot afford to give it to 90, 80, 60, 40, 20%. We can afford to give it to a very small number, and it makes us feel ever so good when we do, because I'm sure every person that we've given assistance to was needy. I'm sure that they all were very sympathetic, and but here's the other problem. The majority of people paying these taxes are also in need. And the problem is there are so very many people who would qualify under the metrics that we've set, who have a loss of employment-related income, a change of family dynamics, or emergency expense of some kind. I mean, heck, I've had all three of those in the last year.
I would assume that the members of the public that are receiving these funds would also be categorized as taxpayers.
I didn't say they weren't. Let me finish my thought before I let you have the floor
question.
back.
Do
I have the floor?
Employment-related changes, just one moment. The employment-related changes, do you find that the members of the public enrolled in this program become reemployed?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
What about whether or not in the next 3 years they have another financial crisis and require money again?
Part of the housing case management that's required that we do with the clients is what would you do if this happened again next year? And sometimes clients didn't know about other programs available. In that specific example of a vehicle repair, instead of not paying your rent, you can actually, there's other programs available to you that would help you pay for your vehicle so that you could pay your rent. And I'm not sure if not every client gets $5,000, Mr. Mayor. It's up to.
Right. Well, let me finish my thought. I'm not complaining about it, but I was interrupted, and the end of my thought was important, and it's this: there are huge numbers, probably 40%, maybe 60% of the people in this city are poor. That's statistically factual. And they've all had, I just had my air conditioner go out, cost me $10,500. Now, I'm blessed. I was able to pay for it. But there are other, what do people, everybody's having financial crisis every day. My point is that we cannot afford as a city to provide for 60% of the people who are all having financial crises in their life. And they're all definitionally meet the definition of being poor under government, 30% of AMI. The 75% of the people of Vista are below the area median income. We are a poor city, definitionally. We cannot afford to give this, generous charity to all of the people who have a genuine and legitimate need for it. Therefore, how do we justify that a very small number of people who were able to find and work the program get it? And frankly, there is no lifetime exclusion of, hey, you got this 7 years ago, you're not going to get it again. We're creating an endless patchwork of programs that people who know how to work them can benefit from. But most people are amazed to find out about all these lucrative benefits. And so I'm going to suspend now, but please do tell us more about how this is truly changing a cycle of financial challenge versus just delaying it to the next incidence of crisis. Because that's what I really want to know. I want to help people. I think all of my neighbors and all of the taxpayers and all the good people of Vista want to help people. It's not about, and the other side wants to make it about Franklin doesn't want to help people. He doesn't want to give them a nickel. Franklin's a greedy, cheap miser, doesn't want to help people. That's not the truth. I want to help everybody where the help would change the incidence of future need. But if it's only moving the problem on the calendar forward to the next year, then the money didn't really solve a problem. But somebody had to work very hard to earn that money to pay for the government to have it to move a problem on the calendar. I want to remove problems from society, not move them forward on somebody's agenda. So I'm sorry to throw all that at you, but you gotta speak to it because you're the only one that knows some of these people that got the help. I never get to meet them. I never get to know anything, not even anonymized. And this is a complaint. The person that you voters have charged to oversee the expenditure of your tax dollars does not have, because the staff has ganged up and said, I can't even have a little bit of information. I don't even want their name. I don't even want their name. But I would love to have a little bit of information
Since
about
the mayor
each of
has
these
said
cases.
he would suspend with his comments.
But I never get it.
I just want to be clear to you and all other service providers that you do not need to respond to any particular ideology. You can share the facts of the program with us and we will readily hear them. And I appreciate you being here today. Unfortunately, I'm only here for a few more minutes. So I would like to hear more about the success of the program and the status of the services and how they've been rendered thus far.
Catalina, do you have access to that third slide that?
Yes, I have it here, so. I'll read it out.
I just want to speak a little bit about who qualifies for this, for these funds, and what are the requirements that they can sustain themselves moving forward.
Please.
First of all, obviously a copy of their 3 or 14-day notice, evidence of the emergency situation. They can't just come in and say, hey, my car broke down. They have to bring invoice, 3 months of bank statements, pay stubs, proving that they can pay their rent moving forward after we've assisted them with this one-time assistance. They have to sign a rental assistance agreement. They have to sign an ROI for us to contact the landlord directly. The landlord has to sign a rental assistance agreement saying that, hey, once we get this client up to date, you're not going to turn around and evict them anyway. A rent ledger, a signed lease, obviously a W-9 from the landlord, housing case management that includes budgeting, individual service plan with SMART goals, a biopsychosocial assessment, and a self-sufficiency matrix. So those are just some of the things that we're trying to make sure that we're not just handing out $5,000 and then 3 months from now they're in the same predicament.
Absolutely. And based on what you're sharing, we very diligently developed these programs. We've had several iterations of the VHAP program. This is our first time with Interfaith administering the program. Is that right, Jonathan? One more time?
With rental assistance specifically?
Yeah.
Or any contracts?
How long has Interfaith been supporting the VHAP program? Because
This is the first time we've had it.
For the VHAP specifically, just so yes, MAC was our previous administrator of the original.
Okay.
VHAP.
Jonathan, pull that microphone closer to you.
Yeah, so we had a service provider previously. With this newest iteration of funding, we're partnering with Interfaith. These meetings, and welcome, by the way, these meetings are an overview of services that are being provided. And great to hear that case management is being provided, that budgeting is being included, that you are administering the program through criteria where you're trying to identify the families that are going to be able to sustain their life in the long term. You and other service providers that are administering these funds, have the duty to comply with the contract, and you absolutely are. Our council and other elected leaders, we have a responsibility to respond to the crisis in our community. And there is a economic crisis in our community. Throughout our nation, we have seen that there is a greed problem in this country. I'm one of many people who does support public benefits. And I do believe that we need to make sure that there's a safety net for people so that they can be supported in the prevention of further economic despair. Because the clients that you're serving are taxpayers. They are productive members of our community. They work really hard. And their current economic environment and the state of things where we do not see in this country that billionaires are paying fair share of their taxes, where we are seeing cuts to public benefits, that certainly is going to make an impact on our families here locally. Despite how hard they work, despite how much planning they put in, debt is going up. The cost of everything is going up. So when you do need to get your car repaired, I want our families to make sure that they have food on the table. People are pulling from resources all over in order to make sure that their family is fed, clean, has, a good routine. Kids can get to school without much stress. Parents can get to work with reliable transportation. Medical costs are so high for Americans. I would like to dive into these statistics more, and I'd love for you to survey your clients to see who has been impacted by medical costs. It's something I hear all the time. Americans are very smart, resilient people. I think that the people who are enrolled in this program are not lesser than anyone else. They are actually quite resilient, and they deserve to have support. Just because you receive support from public services doesn't mean you're less hardworking or that you didn't plan out your life well enough. We have some incredibly hardworking people, taxpayers, who have invested into programs like these that are then going through something really difficult and applying and receiving funds so that they can sustain their family's future in the long term. So I appreciate you being able to provide the facts of the program. Clearly, there's ideological differences amongst elected officials. I, for one, will continue to support public benefit programs because I don't believe in this bootstrap ideology. I don't have this idea that the people enrolled in this program are just not working hard enough. I know how hard people work. And I know how little some people work while hoarding more and more wealth for themselves. And I'm willing to call that out too. So I think we need a new tax system in this country that actually allows for working people to get ahead without having to access public benefits. We are here because working people can't get ahead. One crisis, one medical crisis, one car issue, one member of your household losing their income and you no longer can afford a roof over your head, that's not the American dream. So I'm highly concerned with what the enrollment in this program actually means, right? Which is not that Americans are lazy and taking advantage. It means that there are people who, despite working really, really hard every single day, still can't make it in our community. And as someone who actually grew up in this community, and I see how the cost of living has changed, it's always been hard, but it continues to get harder. And if we can reach into a family, assess their situation reasonably, right, with reasonable criteria, and then decide that we're going to support them, I think that that's a worthwhile endeavor. Not everyone would agree, but this has been a program that has been continued to be supported by the council. I can't remember, Mayor, if you voted for it every single time, but it might not have been unanimous, but ultimately it's something that has continued to come up on our agendas because we do see that it's a lifeline for people. Maybe in the future we can get more details of specific stories. Maybe in the long term we can talk about 5, 7, 10-year impacts of the program. So those are all worthwhile conversations, but I really want to press that the existence of this program is because we are in an economic crisis. Because working people, despite working 40, 60, 90 hours a week, multiple jobs, some of y'all in this room still can't keep a roof over our heads. That is the reality of the situation as far as I see it. The people in this program work really hard, and it is just unsustainable for people to do it all on their own. That's why we have community. So I support community. I support my decision to advance programs like VHAP. And I really wish I could stay longer for more of this discussion and hear from our other service providers. But just, as a note, I'll leave this with the mayor. None of the service providers are obligated to respond to any ideological concerns. Feel free to share the facts of the information and share your queries or your feedback as you have it. But just know that you have been allowed a contract with the City of Vista and that we are counting on you to fulfill that contract. And I really appreciate everyone's due diligence. Everyone in this room has worked really hard to ensure that we're on track with our goals and we are completing our contracts. And thank you to staff for getting all of our contractors in this room together. It's a really important time for us to do that. I wish I had more time, but everyone enjoy the rest of your day. All right, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I know that you certainly didn't mean to imply that I was saying that
apologies.
I'm making comments. I know you didn't.
We need to close the Braddock meeting due to loss of a quorum. So
Okay, we'll close the Braddock meeting and we'll continue the public record.
I'm sorry, I'm hearing from our council that we must adjourn if I'm to exit.
Fine, we're adjourned.
All right.
We're adjourned. We'll
Okay.
continue
appreciate
the
that.
public record of my comments, though. I know that you didn't mean to impugn my remarks as saying that people weren't taxpayers, weren't hardworking, or were somehow lazy. But were those comments directed at me, I would certainly take umbrage at that because I never said those things and did not imply those things. So with that, is there anything else you'd like to share?
I think I'd just like to end with, from what I've seen, this program did exactly what it was supposed to do. It helped people who were behind on their rent, didn't have any other options at the time, and were faced with a 3-day notice.
Yeah.
I think that moving forward, we can omit personal information and submit stories for each one of these clients.
I think it would be hugely helpful to have some narrative. I've been given every reason under the sun why I couldn't have any transparency or information. I am the only person who was charged by the voters with overseeing the expenditure of their funds. And yet staff has seen fit to make me feel like I can't have access to information, always throwing things like HIPAA, which does not apply to most of the work done by our homeless service providers. I've read the law, I've looked, I've studied this. It's, the Health Insurance Portability and Privacy Act does not, in fact, enjoin most of this stuff, though it's been thrown by people who are not attorneys in our faces if we can't have. And what it is it's a wall of obfuscation to prevent us from knowing how the money's being spent. And we're talking about millions of dollars that are being literally given away in grants. And remind me your first name, sir.
Gary.
Gary, I know that all of these people are sympathetic. If I were standing before you and I was in financial crisis, I would be sympathetic too. I have worked since I was 12 years old, every day of my life. I have not been unemployed